Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to FISPAN and SCWIST Women in FinTech event. My name is Naima Munir, and my pronouns are she, her, and I will be the moderator for today. I'm a full stack developer, and I work at JAM. It's a Calgary-based startup, and I also volunteer as Director of Youth Engagement with Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology, also known as SCWIST. I am so excited to engage with our fantastic speakers today to get to know about their experiences and also about how they got to where they are today. So today I'll begin with a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which our offices operate is on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Before we jump into getting to know the panelists, let me introduce Megan Wright. She's going to tell us about FISPAN, and then I'll tell you about a bit about SCWIST, and then we'll start the event. Over to you, Megan.
Thank you so much. All right. Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the new graduate in strategy here at FISPAN. So a bit about the company. We are the market leader in ERP banking. Our turnkey platform makes it simple for banks to offer business banking services embedded in any business application. We power best-in-class commercial banking experiences by removing friction and adding value to how the bank clients operates their business. We were founded by Lisa in 2016, and we have grown now to over 120 employees worldwide with 2 offices in downtown Vancouver. We have multiple employees across Canada as well in Victoria, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax, as well as internationally in Ireland, the UK, and Ukraine. We provide 4 weeks vacation from day 1 to all of our employees, a comprehensive health and dental plan, as well as 2 free lunches every week and other perks as well. We currently recruit for junior, intermediate, and senior roles in all departments, and we have a lot of open positions on the engineering and sales team. And next year, we are expecting a 50% growth in all departments across the organization. So here at FISPAN, we want to continue to grow our teams to be even more diverse as we expand during our hyper growth. So with that said, I hope this event interests you about FISPAN, and hopefully our HR team will see your application soon. Back to you, Naima.
Thank you, Megan. Now I'll tell you a bit about SCWIST. So Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology have been working for 40 years. We're a nonprofit organization, and we've been working for 40 years to empower women in STEM. And our goal is to create an environment where women and girls in Canada can pursue their interest, education, and careers in STEM without barriers. Next slide, please. So our values are empower, include, inspire, connect, and sustain. So to provide mentorship and leadership that encourages women and girls to accomplish their STEM goals, we work on youth engagement, professional development, and advocacy. Some of our programs are listed here, and most of our programs are funded by Canadian government and also donation of wonderful people and organizations. So if you're interested in connecting with us, this is our link is squist.ca, and you can become SCWIST member by signing up on our link and support our mission of empowering Canadian women to become STEM leaders. So now moving forward with the event, please feel free to drop any questions using the Q&A feature so that you can ask the panelists your question. And we also have Gurpreet Atwal, our HR operations specialist at FISPAN, and she'll be sending participants a question during the event. So look out for that. And if we don't have time to get to all the questions, we'll make sure that we follow up afterwards. So moving forward, I'm super excited to introduce our panelists that will be discussing their experiences in tech and how they got to where they are today. So we have Bronka Nikolic, Head of Delivery at FISPAN, Owen Sturgis, VP of Engineering at FISPAN, and Floria Ivanova, HR Lead at FISPAN. And we also have Ronald Alberts, former Vice President at SCWIST. I'll let each of you introduce yourselves, and also please tell us that what sparked your interest in working in tech. Thank you. So Bronka, would you go first, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nima. So my name is Branka, and I'm head of delivery at FISPAN since November of 2020. I support a group of professionals, project managers, and business analysts, mainly to deliver FISPAN solution to the banks. They're managing expectation external with our bank customers, as well as internal with our teams at FISPANs. And our main job is to make sure that we keep promises to our banks, and that only promises that we can actually keep we make to the banks. So as a kid, I was always interested at science and math. I liked problem solving, and that led me to go into technology. And then I got a degree in computer science, software engineering, and I started my career as an engineer. I worked for several years as an engineer in high tech. And then I realized that I would be serving community better if I actually move more into area where the communication is required. So I decided to move into project management and then program management, product management, and now I'm here at FISPAN. It has been an interesting journey, and I'm very happy to be participating in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Branka. Owen, would you go next, please?
Sure, thanks. I'm Owen Sturgis, the VP of Engineering at FISPAN. So at FISPAN, I'm responsible for all engineering activities. This is everything from developing to operating our system. And currently that's a staff of 50 to 60 people. And as was mentioned, we are growing rapidly. So if you're interested in joining us, please drop us a line. So I grew up with a computer, but it was never really something of interest for me. I really loved physics and math, and so that's what I did when I went to university. I started a physics degree. About halfway through that degree, I was thinking about what am I going to do when I grow up, and there aren't really a lot of jobs for physicists. So looking down the list of things that I could do, computer programmer was on that list. So I thought, well, I better try this out, and it was the dot-com boom at the time, so I dropped out of university. And thought I'd just give this a try. And 4 years later, I went back to school to finish my degree. And it is the best decision I ever made. This is such a fantastic industry. I totally love it. And so since then, I've been working for both small companies and large companies across a variety of industries. Initially I was hooked by the technical problem solving, but over time, I've been really drawn into solving the people and organizational problems that I feel are unique to SaaS businesses with our rapidly changing technology and really complex problems that require exceptional teamwork. So that really has led me to the role that I'm in today, and I'm really loving it.
Thank you, Owen. Claudia?
Thanks. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Floria Ivanova. I'm the head of human resources at FISPAN. I've been part of the team since 2017, where we had about 10 employees, and I've seen the company grow to our current size of about 120. And like Owen said, we are hiring. So if you're interested, please take a look at our careers page. But it is quite exciting to see that growth. And I hold a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in marketing and HR from Simon Fraser University. And I actually found FISPAN when I was still in school and I was looking for a co-op program. And I guess what initially attracted me to FISPAN and the tech industry in general were really the opportunities that it presented. I could see myself grow just as the technology has grown in the past few years. And it's really made me want to see where it would take me. And to this day, I've not regretted it. I'm very happy to be in this industry, and I'm very excited to see what the future will hold for myself, for the industry, and for FISPAN.
Thank you, Claudia. Rana, would you go next, please?
And last but not least, my name is Renelle Alberts. I'm the former vice president of SCWIST, but still very much involved in the organization on a number of committees. And I mention here that I think I'm the oldest panelist. And the reason I mention it is that I've seen the most change in technology over the last 3 decades. In the early 80s, my dad bought me a Commodore 64 computer, for those of you who remember that. He's an electrical engineer, and he had a great influence on me in terms of teaching me, introducing me to tech and to engineering in general, STEM, really. I was also naturally good at STEM subjects and went on to complete a bachelor's of computer science in the early 90s. That was in South Africa. In case you didn't pick up on my accent, no, I'm not from New Zealand. I realized, unlike Owen, that I don't like coding at all. So I moved into business analysis fairly quickly, which is really basic, bridging the gap between IT and the business. So making sure that everyone's needs are met with the capabilities that are available. I've been very lucky to work on international projects all over the world over the last nearly 30 years. And I've been running my own consulting company for almost 15 years now, which has been a fantastic experience. And my involvement at an organization like SCWIST is incredibly important to me, because it keeps me focused on promoting girls and women in STEM. And events such as this is what we're trying to do, is amplify the voices of women in technology, obviously at FISPAN, specifically in FinTech. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Ronel, for sharing your journey with us. Moving to the next question. So what does diversity and inclusion mean to you? Starting off with Claudia.
Yeah, thank you. I guess very simply put, for me, diversity and inclusion is the act and the environment where everyone belongs and they feel as though they should and they deserve to be there. It's being part or being in an environment where we have different ethnicities, we can see it, but also different schools of thought and different perspectives, and they're all equal. They're all being accepted and they all feel heard. That for me is diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Claudia, for sharing your thoughts on that. Owen?
Thanks. I guess I look at it from a perspective of there are many studies in the world that show that diverse teams are higher performing, that they are happier, they're more innovative, they have lower turnover. And like at its base, like this is all great reasons for being interested in DEI. But for me, it's a moral imperative. This is the right thing to do. We live in a society that is not always just, and so we should do what we can to try and make it as just as possible. And for me, I've experienced a lot of privilege in my career, and I want to use my position now to improve the situation for others that don't have that privilege.
Thank you very much, Owen. Branka?
Thank you so much. I really just have to follow what Claudia and Owen said. And to me, empathy is one of the key words that goes together with diversity and inclusion. It's really accepting people for who they are and what they have to offer in that moment and beyond that moment. It means in many ways diversity beyond gender and age and skin color. It's about diversity of thoughts and personalities. And I think that it goes beyond the workplace. It's actually going to be exposed to different ideas. When we are checking things on the internet, when we are reading posts, I think it's good that we expose ourselves to different aspects that are brought into the world, not just being and living in our own bubble. So trying to really make sure that I understand and have empathy to everybody and include them in my personal as well as professional life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Branka. Ronan?
Thanks, Naima. Claudia, Owen, Branka, you've basically covered everything that's important for me as well. So thank you for that. It's going to shorten my speech. But the one thing is that coming from South Africa, I grew up with apartheid, and I saw apartheid break down. And I saw democracy come in. So I've seen the worst and the best of the country, and I've seen divisive and I've seen DEI at its worst, or lack of DEI at its worst. So I've seen the devastation economically, socially, personally, and the list goes on, of when DEI isn't implemented correctly. And it's an absolute, Owen, like you said, it's a moral imperative. It's more than just a moral, it's a physical imperative as well, to ensure that we do instill DEI practices in ourselves personally, and within our teams and within our society. There are a lot of demographics. We can look at how different communities are composed of statistically women, people of color, LGBTQ people, and so forth. But the representation itself comes from the need for mutual respect and being able to leverage the differences that each person brings, along with their community and their kind of societal background that they come from. And there is strength in difference, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Ronel. And yes, there is strength in difference, and that's the key to success. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that. Moving on to the next question, which is the extension of this question. So what diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies have you utilized on your team to better support women and other underrepresented groups successfully? So let's start with you, Ronel.
Oh, now I'm first. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, there are two things that are important for me. I'm gay and I'm bipolar. So I have two invisible issues that I deal with. So what I do on my teams is I make sure that I share who I am. I live out of the closet. If I'm struggling on a particular day because of my bipolar disorder, I let people know about that. I manage it. And I guess in a way I give them permission, personal permission to be okay with whatever it is that they're having to deal with as well as a visible or an invisible minority. And being a South African, we're very different beasts. We have this need to voice the unspoken all the time. If something if someone needs to be called out because they've expressed a particular bias or their behavior isn't particularly appropriate, I call them out. Obviously not publicly, but I do call them out and I do try and address the issue just to raise awareness. So for me, everything, my DEI strategies are far more internally focused on how I live and how I demonstrate my behavior. On a practical level, obviously, one thing that I also really focus on a lot is making sure that everybody has a place at the table. And there's so many things that means. It's ensuring unbiased hiring practices, which the other panelists will talk about as well. Allowing everybody to speak if you have just not just speak in a meeting, but speak their mind. There's a big difference. And a big thing for me is, and don't laugh, it's I call it, don't expect women to arrange the birthday cake. My focus is women for obvious reasons. And what I've experienced in my 30-year career is that the responsibility for the peripheral tasks in the office do fall on women. So it's arranging the birthday cake for the birthday person. It's arranging the catering. It's cleaning up after the catering. it's arranging the Christmas decorations and all those things. And it just reinforces a gender bias, in my opinion. I don't like it. I don't allow it on my teams. I make sure that that the responsibilities are shared equally across team members, whoever they are. And that's a very important thing that I do, that I do feel very strongly about. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ronelle. Branka?
This is really great, Ronelle. Thank you so much for sharing this. So I also mainly utilize my personal experience. Yes, I read about what are all these different strategies, but somehow I go back to the way how I feel when I interact with people. For many years, I have managed professional services project in semiconductor industry. So it doesn't get more male dominated than that. So I had customers, being Intel, Motorola, Texas Instruments. It's really very, very heavy development, very low level development. So software, just a layer above hardware. And I've been often the only female at the table, the only person to actually speak with an accent. The only thing at the time I was kind of, I would match with my skin color. Everything else was completely off. So that definitely put me into a position of, questioning myself and questioning, am I capable of doing certain things? Do I have a skill set that is required? And that constant chatter that you have in your mind helps you understand that you might have people on your team that are having that chatter, that are having that discussion. And by making sure that people have time to speak and to speak their mind and to have different opinion and to feel safe to challenge some of the predominant opinions is something that I see as major contribution when you're talking about the AI. So that is basically strategy, making sure to give space to people and to build an environment in which people would feel safe to express what they think. And I think, again, it goes beyond the office. It goes in your private life as well.
Thank you very much, Branka. Having a background in EE, I completely know how it feels like to be the only woman around the table among a group of men. So yeah, thank you for sharing thoughts on that. Owen.
Thanks. I obviously don't have any personal experience stories to draw from here. But what I have seen in teams that I have worked with that I think works well, a few things. So starting with hiring. So you have to make DEI a priority in recruiting. And so this could take the form of setting targets, measuring progress against those targets. But I think it has to be a conscious effort and something that people are held accountable for delivering on, just like any other goal that a company would have. I also have found that mentoring, this is a really important part, which I think is often overlooked because somebody steps in to a new role and it's really important for them to find someone that they can connect with, someone that they can see themselves as in 5 years or in 10 years. And so I think helping women and underrepresented members of the team find a mentor and help them sort of get on that path to growing their career. And then the next thing I would say is promoting. So really actively look for opportunities to provide like leadership roles for women and underrepresented members and encourage them to apply. Often we hear the stories about the difference between men and women applying for jobs when a man sees 2 out of 10 skills that they've got that are being asked for, and they're like, great, I'm totally qualified. And the woman is making sure that like all 10 are checked. So often they just don't think it's the imposter syndrome or whatever that we all have, like, oh, I'm not ready for that role. We'll really push people to step up. They're more than capable most of the time. So then the last couple of things I would say is make fostering an inclusive culture an expectation for every manager on the team. This is sort of table stakes. If you can't do this, you're not a manager, or you shouldn't be a manager. And then the final thing is setting an example by not tolerating toxic behavior. That just is baseline. You have to set that as an example. As a senior member of the team, you just simply cannot let that kind of culture grow within an organization.
Thank you very much, Owen. Claudia?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a really great question and something that I'm still working on and learning from, and especially what everyone has already said here. It's very informative and just getting to speak about it in honest and open conversations. And I guess from my perspective, specifically on the hiring and recruitment side, in addition to what Owen said, because I completely agree with what he said, I find myself asking questions like, who are we missing out on in terms of candidates? Why aren't they applying? Why aren't they already part of our team? Asking myself and my team those questions, and then being able to have open and honest conversations about why and trying to find solutions is really a great first step on that recruiting side, and to just talk about it. And then something else that actually FISPAN did this year was work with a consultant to find opportunities and areas where we could change what we were doing to better support women and other underrepresented groups. And even just strategies like building out equitable opportunities, providing resources and support, and having a safe place, like Ronald said, to speak about it, and even offering benefits that might directly affect why women wouldn't be able to return to work after having a baby, for example. You don't always have to have the big answers. You don't have to take big steps. Those small steps that you take could really make a difference and could really help with what we're missing.
Thank you very much, Claudia. So next question that I have for all of you is really important. How do you combat unconscious bias when recruiting candidates? Owen?
So I think there's a few things that I've seen work. I think there are probably many more than this, but I'll start with three that I've seen success with. So I think the first thing is implicit or unconscious bias training. I think at the bare minimum, everybody that's involved in the hiring process needs to get that training. They need to really understand their implicit or unconscious bias, and they need to figure out steps that they need to take to mitigate their influence on their decision making. The other thing I would say is employ a diverse interview panel. So you should never be hiring people based on just the hiring manager making the decision. Should always be a panel, and ideally that panel represents the community, the wider community, or the type of organization that you want to see. So make that panel diverse in every way that you want to be represented. Ideally the candidate sees themselves in one of those people, or certainly can connect with them. I think that really helps. And then the final thing is to have a very structured interview process, so that this is a way to take out the sort of variation that happens when two people find they have something in common, and immediately they become like, well, now we just hire all people that like to do whatever because we've got it in common. So really have a clear set of requirements and assessment criteria, and ensure that every single candidate goes through that same process, so that there isn't a bias that's being put in there. That's all I have. I'm sure there's many more, but that's what I have been employing.
Thank you very much, Owen. Ronald?
I agree with Owen very much in terms of having a structured approach to the interviewing process. There's affinity bias abounds. It is so common, and it's devastating to a team. If you end up having an outsider come into a group of people that are all similar to each other, because the hiring practices weren't objective and panelized, as it were. As Branka and I spoke a little bit earlier about what I do with if I'm hiring somebody, I focus really on my internal attitude and approach to basically focusing on what I do. So I consciously, almost physically, apply my mind to listening to the candidate and what they have to contribute. So if there's something that is different about them, something that I've never experienced before, or something that I'm unfamiliar with, or something that I'm uncomfortable with for whatever reason, which does happen with everybody. There's something new. I basically need to get over myself, right? Because I have a job to do, and I need to put the person being interviewed is first and front and foremost. So so that's very important. And keep an open mind. As I said, being a gay woman, somehow, because I'm so open and out about it, it does come out quite often, and that does put people off. So, and I know how people react to me, even in this day and age, even in a country like Canada. And, you know, I can't afford for myself to react in a similar way to somebody who's different to me that I haven't been exposed to before. So that's one thing. Another thing is that we actually use at SCWIST is a text analyzer / gender decoder, basically to eliminate bias when drafting job descriptions. We need to make sure that the person writing the job description isn't including forms of bias into the language and the grammar that they use. So using a text-based software is very helpful with that. And something that I have experienced myself, and this could be a little bit contentious to say this on the panel, but what I've experienced from working on projects around the world is that when people hear my accent, they have mistaken me for being less intelligent. If they don't understand what I'm saying, it's clear in their reaction, it's clear in the types of questions they ask, it's clear in, it's just very obvious. If you're on the receiving end, you pick up on it very quickly. So if in an interview situation, I am not understanding somebody because of their accent, I actually ask them to slow down and I tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not following your accent, but I want to hear what you're saying. We need to make sure that everything that you can contribute in this interview is heard and is understood correctly by me. And I apologize, but you know, for not being able to follow it correctly, but if you could just speak slower or in a way that is more comfortable for you to help me, basically help me help you. It's very important for me because I need to really hear what the person is saying. And language barriers are often, certainly in this day and age where we've got a global economy, language barriers can become a problem. Thanks.
Thank you, Ronald. Claudia?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Ronald, for sharing that too. I think this is a really, really great question and one that resonates with me being on the human resources and recruitment side of things. And I also liked what Owen said about the interviewing panel and making sure that the candidate can actually see themselves at the company. They see the company, they see people like them, and that will really go a long way. So I'm glad that he mentioned that. But we're actually very fortunate at FISPAN to have a team of hiring managers who do believe in DEI practices and want to see our company grow in the right direction. And so with that, we have a lot of hiring managers who find strategies to overcome unconscious biases when recruiting candidates. And they look at the experience, only the experience, and not at the personal information that might be there, like the name or the photo. It's really that job description or that job experience that they're looking for. And then also similar to Ronald, we also run our job description through a gender decoder, which we found very successful. And that basically allows us to see if a job description or posting is more gender biased on one side. And so if the results do show that, we can change some of the language to reflect the results. And so if it's more in line on the male side of things, we'll even bring it to some of our female employees or female hiring managers and ask them some advice and what languages we should use to be able to connect with those specific candidates. So we've also used that and found it very successful.
Thank you, Claudia. Branka?
The last, very little to add to all these great points that are already made by the rest of the panel. I just wanted to share with Ronelle one thought which crossed my mind while you were saying, and I read it and I really resonated with me. It's like, my speech might have an accent, but my thoughts don't. And I really like that one. I think that it resonates in many ways. So when hiring, really trying to be data-driven, and I think that has been covered very well, and actively seeking how to remove any kind of bias that might be unintentionally there. And I was recently going through some of the questions that we use at our screening process. And one of the questions was a question about hobbies. So I actually realized that maybe asking for hobbies and looking for people who are outdoorsy might actually be putting people into particular segment of us matching to something that we like. And I decided to remove that question. When thinking about it, is I've seen that screening interview process many times before, but it didn't occur to me until, light bulb actually went on to connect the dots for that one as well. So it's really actively seeking, how do we do this better? How do we make sure that we are removing all obstacles for people to actually join and to people to be happy in a new environment? And that's all. I really don't want to be repeating points from before, because they were all such an excellent points.
Thank you very much, Branka. So my next questions are for a specific panelist. So this question is for you, Ronald and Owen. It's about invisible minorities, just like Ronald mentioned. So invisible minorities are those minorities that might have a unique sexual orientation or that might have any mental disability that's not really visible. So my question is that, how can we be sensitive and respectful to invisible, underrepresented groups without making assumptions about them? Ronald?
That's wow. Yeah, where to even start? How long do we have? There are a number of things. It's very easy for all of us to make flippant remarks like, my boss is crazy. He's crazy, and use words like crazy. Or use words like, and crazy is probably a bad choice of words here, because some people like me are in fact crazy, but only we can say that. But it's basically being more aware of our choice of language. I've had, on a number of occasions, I've had people over the years say things to me without knowing that I'm bipolar, say things like, oh, she's always depressed. It's exhausting working with her. His son has got, I don't know, something that he suffers from, and he's always taking time off work. It's so frustrating. And it shows a lack of empathy, number one, first and foremost, but it shows a lack of professionalism and respect. It's about using words flippantly without knowing that the other person might well be suffering from that very thing that you're making a joke about. So I'm not suggesting, obviously, that you now need to be hyper aware of everything that you're saying, but just be more aware. Be aware that when you're talking to somebody, actually look at them, like in your mind, look at them and think they could have something that they're dealing with. Like life has happened to them, like it's happened to all of us. They've got issues, they've got baggage, they've got problems that they have to deal with. They've got children, that issues, they've got work issues, they've got childhood issues. It doesn't matter what it is, but they've got stuff that they have to deal with. And bear that in mind, and just always be respectful with dealing with them through your language and through your actions. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you do find out about an invisible minority issue about somebody, when I say I come out to somebody, I've been in very male-dominated fields. So typically the people that if I bring my wife to an event, I introduce her as my wife, or I talk freely about my wife. When people ask me, you know, what's your husband's name? I say, no, I'm married. Her name is Elsha. And the reaction, I think, for a lot of gay women that are out open and you know, fairly agentic in their approach to their work and to their life, is that they're then treated as one of the guys. I've had the distinct displeasure of having people talk to me about men talk to me about other women in the organization in very derogatory terms, as if that's okay and normalized because I'm a gay woman. And that's completely not okay. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be a part of that, and that shouldn't be existing either. Those are what I think of as the invisible toxic environments that happen one-on-one. If, for example, somebody asks if you have a particular religious preference, or you have a particular sexual preference, or whatever your difference is, visible or invisible, be respectful and be gentle with everybody. When you're at work, you're at work. You've got a job to do. You can say what you want to at home. You can do what you want to at home. That's your business. But when you're at the workplace, you've got to take other people's feelings into account, far more so, because you're there for a purpose, and that purpose is to do a job. That's what you're being paid to do. And if you're a leader or in a leadership position, your job is to lead a team of people and set an example. And you can only do that by being respectful of other people. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ronel. Owen.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking to hear those stories, and I mean, I've heard far too many of those stories. I think for me, it all starts with getting to know the person. So, you know, on a human level, they're a person, learn about their experience, their story, what's brought them here, and I think, you know, treat them like a person. And I think you have to lead in many ways in this, in terms of sharing your own experience, being vulnerable, and encouraging other members of the team to share and understand the experience of others on the team. And I think it's through this transparency and openness that we can help break down these preconceptions that we have. And then we see the value in diversity. And I think it's only through getting to know people that you can really understand the power of difference, and why that's something that we should embrace and not run away from.
Thank you very much, Owen. So my second last question is for Branka and Claudia. How can males be better allies in the workplace for female colleagues? Branka?
Thank you so much. So I would like to refer back to quite interesting, I will say, famous study that I think was done in 2003 by Columbia University. So the case study was covering a fairly successful entrepreneur, venture capitalist, going and following this life story. And the students were divided in two groups. And for one group, the name for that entrepreneur was Heidi, and she's actually the right person, living and breathing. And the other group got the same study but the name of the person was Howard. And they were measuring, after reading those case studies, what was the reaction, how students really evaluated those entrepreneurs as being effective, as being likable, as being able to succeed in what they are doing, etc. And it was very interesting to see that both groups of students actually assessed those two entrepreneurs, the same person, as same in terms of their effectiveness. However, Howard was way more likable than Heidi based on those students. And the researchers went even further to realize that for the same actions, man would be considered a leader versus female would be considered controlling. And why that is, it's very interesting. For some reason, that likability score makes different impact to different people to make sure the way how they're approaching the same actions. So the male colleagues could actually help by advocating for their female colleagues, by praising and acknowledging any kind of accomplishment that that particular person have. Basically being the advocate behind the scenes instead of her having to show and to talk about her own contribution to certain things. And I think that that makes a huge difference in day-to-day.
Thank you, Veronica. Claudia?
Yeah, I really like that case study, Veronica, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what I'm going to say around men and males understanding and actually seeing themselves that there is an issue and there is room for improvement. It's always easier when they see it themselves instead of us just telling them that there is a problem. And I think for me, it's just the more you talk about it, not only in the workplace, but also at home too, if we're able to have those frank and honest conversations with our partners, our families, our colleagues, we'll really be able to move DEI in the right direction and make it as important as it should be. And I know your question was more focused around in the workplace, but I personally believe there shouldn't be a difference. There should be equality and inclusion in every part of your life. Males should be allies at home just as much as they should be allies in the workplace. What's the difference between keeping women in junior positions in the workplace and having women be the primary caregiver? What Ronald was saying with the birthday cake, what's that difference there? There are things that can change. And I believe if you change them in one place, they'll ultimately change and roll over, hopefully, in another place as well.
Thank you very much, Claudia. So next question is for you, Owen. How have you been an ally to your female counterparts and other underrepresented groups?
Larry, and I hope that I have. I think that I guess I start by trying to understand. So, you know, I remember the first time I heard stories about what colleagues of mine had experienced over a long-term career in tech. It's horrifying, and you know, it's not uncommon. And so I think it really takes time to understand that not everybody's experience is as positive as yours. And I've had a really positive experience, and I'm sure there's many people that haven't had that positive experience. So have some empathy for that and understanding. I think, you know, learning about their challenges and what they've had to do to sort of survive on a day-to-day basis in the industry. And then, as I mentioned earlier, calling out inappropriate behavior, you know, whether it's intentional or not. I mean, not everybody is intentionally inappropriate. Sometimes they're just not aware that certain things are. And so I think take time to understand, is this intentional, or is it just an opportunity to educate people? And then the final thing is, I think, you know, being in a leadership position, I think it's an opportunity to give those opportunities and credit where credit's due. There was a article I read, I think it was in the Washington Post many years ago, about a number of women in Obama's administration, and it was a very, very diverse group, and they started to use this tool that they called amplification, where they would repeat other members' ideas while giving them credit, but really just so that this idea was coming up again and again and again, sort of broadcasting these ideas. And this was a way that many of the sort of underrepresented or underregarded members of the team were able to drive significant change. And so I think as a leader, listening to your team and then taking those ideas and broadcasting them while giving credit is a way that you can really help raise the profile of members of the team.
Thank you very much, Owen. So we do have time for one more question. This is for Branka and Owen. What resources or advice would you give to someone who wants to build their career or experience in the fintech industry if they don't have any direct exposure to it? Branka?
I am in the spirit of go for it, right? I really believe that nobody else should tell you what you can and what you cannot do. That if you're willing to put the effort in any kind of endeavor, you're definitely able to reach for it. So feel responsible for your outcomes, feel responsible for things that are happening to you, and move on and focus on things which can actually be active in your life and positive in your life. I think that it's fairly scary how easily people can fall into trap of seeing themselves as the victim, as saying, oh, I cannot do it because of this, or I cannot do it because of that. And then that creates the in my mind, wrong focus, right? Instead of thinking about what can I actually do, I think about all the limitations. And then by that, you're creating even more limitations for yourself. So just go for it. If you're missing experience, figure out how you can actually best get that experience and exposure. And there are such a great resources online. Any kind of training can be achieved, you know, for very little. And then lots of mentors are available as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Branka. Owen?
So I'm somewhat new to FinTech. And I'm also going to talk about this solely in the software engineering perspective. I think that, I will say that the transitioning to FinTech, if you have experience in other areas of the software industry, I think is a very easy transition. I mean, maybe there's some edge cases where it's not, but I think for most of the part, look for your transferable skills. And I think that those fit quite well with FinTech in general. I think that if you're looking to make a pivot from another industry, so you don't necessarily have some experience, but you're looking to get into software engineering and FinTech specifically, I think that there is, I mean, everybody is, you know, it's continuous learning. You're going to work several careers throughout your lifetime. So I don't think it's a big thing to go back and look at something like a coding boot camp, which would help you get the basics pretty quickly. But absolutely, I support Branka's advice. Just go for it. I mean, I totally love the industry. I think tech is awesome. I think it's got a great future. There's a lot of problems with it, but I think we can fix them. But in terms of what you can achieve and the flexibility that you have in your life working in this industry, there are a few other opportunities that are equivalent. So go for it.
Thank you very much, Owen. This is our last question for today. Thank you very much, Branka, Owen, Claudia, and Ronald for answering our questions today. So now I'll open the floor for any questions that the audience might have. And you can either raise your hand and type your question in the chat. So yeah, let's see what questions do you have. So we do have a question here that what have you experienced the most resistance? Where have you experienced the most resistance to D&I? So let's start with Ronald.
Sure, the most resistance. Anywhere in South Africa and some of the other countries that I've worked in, unfortunately, there are cultures around the world that are very patriarchal. It's something that as an international worker, you need to be aware of and know when to not fight the battle. You're not there to change minds when you're a visitor to a particular environment. So that's very important. Locally, the most resistance is I found with mental disorders or mental illnesses is where the most kickback comes in. People don't understand it because it's not widely spoken about and it's not understood. And people are afraid to share it, and in doing so, it adds stress, an enormous amount of stress to their life and to their work environment. So DEI or D&I, both of them, I'm trying to think, I've got so many examples, but I'm trying to think of what would be, most relevant for this panel. I think the most important thing is to have a strategy. If you know something about yourself, you're BIPOC, you're gay, you're trans, you're whatever it is that your situation is, have a strategy for when you are faced with resistance. So be prepared, don't be caught unawares. Know that it could happen at any time. Know, and I hate to say this, but be prepared for the worst at all times, because judgment is alive and well. We're human. Whether it's in our personal space or whether it's in our professional space, and have a retort or have something to say ready for if and when it happens. It'll make you feel empowered. It'll make you feel prepared. And it'll make you feel more in control of something that really is outside of your control, which is the judgment of other people. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ronald. So we do have another question in the chat. How do we get people excited about DEI, particularly those who are not in underrepresented groups? Owen, would you want to answer this?
Sure. I'll give it a try. I guess I have tried many ways. I think that being in engineering, you sort of try to make the logical argument, as I think I mentioned some of the things earlier, like there's tons of studies that show that teams are more effective and that people are happier. And I guess, there are some people that just won't change their mind. I mean, I think that if the people are open-minded, those sorts of things are very much going to drive them in that direction where they're going to get on board with it. And so I think that you need to sort of figure out sort of two things. One is that there's, as I mentioned, for me, it's a moral argument, and it doesn't really matter if teams are more effective or not. I think that's kind of icing on the cake. But arguing with someone about trying to get them excited about a moral issue is generally not going to get you there. So I think what I would say is that you find the allies, the people that are on board for this, the people that want to see that change, and work with them. So where the going is easy, you make the progress there, and eventually you hope that you get to enough critical mass where there's sort of two things that happen. One is the resistors give up that resistance and get on board and come with you, or they self-select out. And then you replace them with somebody else that's going to be on board with this change. But yeah, I mean, you cannot expect that you're going to change everybody's mind, but start with the minds that you have already got on board and grow from there.
Thank you very much, Owen. So the next question that we have is that, what are the next steps in the D&I journey for organizations like FISPAN? Claudia, would you please answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think keeping DEI at the forefront of our minds is very, very important. This year specifically for FISPAN, we were just starting our journey with it. And at the beginning of the year, we looked internally, we started looking at our stats and our metrics of our team's compositions, and looking at that was a great first step. But in the middle of the year, and to be very candid, we fell off of it a little bit. We weren't always thinking about it, and that led to maybe hiring more men than women, for example. We need to keep it at the front of our mind. We need to make sure we have interviewing panels, like Owen said, that are representative of who we want and who we have at the company and who we want to try to attract. So we really just need to keep DEI at the forefront of our minds, always there, and just making sure we can get as much buy-in as we can.
Thank you very much, Claudia. So one last question that we have for today is that, it's a great question actually, that do you think that female bosses may also need to work on unconscious biases against subordinate men? While we're putting efforts other way around, we may build an issue there. Veronica, would you like to answer the question?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's such an excellent question. And I really think that it goes across the society, right? That we can go into that pendulum swing from one side to another. I think that we need to be aware of affinity bias as well. When hiring men as well as hiring women, when we are hiring somebody who is younger or who is older, we need to be aware of it, and we need to look into the data and what exactly is required for that job, and how do we make sure that we're getting the candidate who is able to address that. So as a female leader, I'm trying not to have that affinity bias by having in mind that that might be the case by somebody who has a technical background. I'm trying not to have that affinity bias, that I'm looking for somebody who has the same. By being a little bit older than some of the candidates join the team, I'm trying to be aware of that as well, so that there is a value in experience, but there is also value in some energy and enthusiasm that young people bring. So it's really being aware and mixing. What do you see around yourself, and how do you make sure that you have diversity in the team, that you're hiring women as well as men, and how do you hire older people as well as younger people, and people with business background as well as technical background, right? So I think that it's very, very important not to go into completely different direction to now discriminate against somebody who shouldn't be discriminated just because you're trying to support the other group. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Veronica.
Excellent question. Thank you.
Thanks, Veronica. Yes,
I've got something to add to that. I think the queen bee syndrome is something that we could speak about as well. You know, when we talk about bias, and really, I don't think there's anyone here on this panel or as part of the listenership that hasn't heard, either experienced it themselves or heard of people talking about how as soon as a woman reaches a certain level of leadership, that they almost actively prevent other women, and they stop supporting other women in their path going forward within the company. And I've experienced it myself here in Canada. I've experienced it in other parts of the world. And it's very much alive and well, and it is something that we as women need to take into account. That Owen, it's not just on your shoulders and other male allies' shoulders to bring women up within the organization, but as we as women move up into leadership positions, we need to remember that not, Branka, as you said, not at the expense of other groups, but to actively remember that DEI is about all groups of people, that equally all, I'm not even going to list them all because they're too many. Everybody needs to be seen as potential and good potential candidates for a job or for a position. And whatever, I apologize, I don't really understand the queen bee syndrome because it's such a foreign idea to me, why, you know, how it could even come about in the first place. Well, in fact, like most DEI issues, I can't really understand how how discrimination exists. And this coming from a South African. So it's important to remember that as a woman, we do have a responsibility to other women, equally as we have a responsibility to everyone else. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we're short on time, so any of the questions that we have in the chat, we're going to follow up on that. And once again, thank you very much, Claudia, Ronald, Owen, and Branka for being amazing panelists for today and for providing your insight and advice about your experiences. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for participating today. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.